All right. Well, today we are going to be making some black beans. Try to keep it really simple, especially if it's complementing another dish. Um, Sometimes people get a little too overzealous with their seasoning and basically turn black beans into chili. So we're going to just kind of stick with a very simple recipe to complement, in this case, the larger meal being a Cuban sandwich. So it's real easy to get started. I'm just going to need a um, teaspoon of sea salt. And this is another one that this is a process you're gonna want to start essentially the night before. Um, I'm going with a pound of black beans. And you want to start the night before so that the beans have a chance to soak. And then when you do start cooking them, they're less likely to break and fall apart as they're trying to take on that water too quickly. And essentially all you're gonna want to do is just make sure that they're submerged in water. Um, just like that. You can set them in any sort of bowl or container. Um, you can leave them out on the counter or in the fridge. Obviously, if it's a little bit warmer, the water will diffuse into the beans a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to stir up the salt. Make sure that it's diffused into the water, and there we go. Now we just come back tomorrow, and we'll be ready to start cooking. Welcome back. We're ready to get our beans in the pot. Going to start off by putting in a knob of butter there, along with some beef tallow for a little extra flavor. Um, you can always use lard to add a little flavor to your beans as well. And what we're going to do is get started by sauteing 2 shallots and then also 5 cloves of garlic. I'm going to let my pan heat up a little bit more before I do that. And I'm just going to want them to start getting browned. And from there, we'll be ready to incorporate the beans. And then, of course, we're going to add a teaspoon of sea salt now, since we'll be draining off the beans, and it'll help to sweat the uh, shallots and the garlic. Definitely recommend using a heavier pan or pot, sorry. Something like one of these, like a Dutch oven kind of thing. It'll help to cook it. You can more easily cook the beans at a lower temperature and keep a little pressure in the pot, which will make them cook a little bit faster, but still at a gentle pace. And I am still getting used to this cooked up, so I'll have to come back in a second once it's kind of heated up. All right, so we're back. Definitely got a pro tip to offer any home cook. If you're working with a hot plate and it's not plugged in, it'll have trouble getting heated up. So now we've got the shallots and the garlic sweating in the oil here. I really primarily want 2 things out of this, just to kind of take some of the edge off of the shallots and also to get a lot of that flavor into the fat itself, so that when it later emulsifies a little bit with the beans, you'll just have that wonderful garlic and onion or shallot flavor throughout. If you don't have shallots, or you don't want to go with shallots, you can always just chop up half or 3/4 of a yellow onion or white onion, and be totally fine with that. The herbs we're going to go with today are going to be bay leaves, oregano, and thyme. Um, to a degree that will be kind of to taste. Um, And the big thing that we're going to do to add flavor as well is going to be to put in a quart of vegetable broth. Since the sandwich that this is going with is going to be pretty pork heavy, and there's already beef tallow in here, I really wanted to go with just kind of more of a neutral broth like vegetable. So put the whole thing in there. You may want to drain off some of the water from the black beans, because some of the starches may come out, and just depending on how thick you want your black beans to be, you might want to pour that off. So we're going to put in, that's a really large bay leaf. We're going to put in 4 bay leaves. And I like to freeze my thyme so that the leaves will just essentially fall off. And so I'm putting in about a teaspoon of thyme leaves. So you can also just do dry as well. The oregano I'm going to throw them in stem and all. The thyme and bay leaves, when you freeze them, they tend to hold their flavor. Something like rosemary and basil do not. So I definitely wouldn't recommend doing that. You don't need to bring it up to a boil by any means before you bring or incorporate your beans. So I'm just going to do that right now. I left a little bit of water in there from the beans. And from here, you're just going to want to bring it up to a low simmer. Personally, I like to keep it at a lower heat and just cook it longer. Beans can tend to come out softer, less of them are breaking and falling apart. So we'll just let this come up to temperature and come back to it. What I just want is to have some nice gentle steam, some bubbles coming up. I really prefer cooking black beans specifically nice, low, and slow. It's something you can just kind of leave on the burner for a few hours without having to worry about it. And before I essentially put the lid on, just to let it do its thing for the next couple hours, I'm just going to essentially just grind some pepper in there to taste. If you were to measure it, I would say probably like half a teaspoon. And this is just, like I said, it's just going to sit. It's going to do its thing for the next couple of hours. And then once it is done and ready, we'll take it out. And I like to keep the lid on, keep it low, like I said. Once the beans are done, or very close to done, I'll take the lid off and turn the heat up if I need to cook off some of the liquid and reduce it down. And we'll come back in a little bit. All right, so we've had our black beans slowly simmering just like this on the stovetop for about 3 hours. And now just to kind of finish it off, I want to do half a teaspoon of ground coriander and then half a teaspoon of ground cumin. The reason I add this in last is because cumin tends to cook off pretty easily. So I just want the flavor to stay in there and stay more fresh. And the last thing we'll add here is a little lime zest. So I'm just going to zest about half this lime. Don't want to be too powerful. I just want a little bit of acid and cut through the earthiness. And the last thing I do is, so after I stir this up, I want the there'd be a little bit more creaminess to the black beans. So I just kind of, you could use a potato smasher even just to get in there and be quicker. I've even used a little hand blender, just kind of blitzed it a bit. But I'm just going to kind of smash some of the black beans. And as it kind of cooks here for about another 30 minutes, it'll slowly bring some more of those starches out and thicken up a little bit. There we go, we're almost done. A little taste. Oh, that's fantastic. You can taste the cumin and the coriander in there and all the herbs. It's going to be perfect as soon as when we're done wrapping this one up. All right, so the last thing to do is basically just to garnish your black beans with some cilantro and some green onion. And it turned out just absolutely fantastic. The beans are incredibly aromatic, and the cumin, the coriander, all comes through. Now, there are definitely more complex ways to make black beans, but I think that this really brings out their best and truest flavor. I'm sure in the future we'll have other videos, going through other options. But definitely like, subscribe, and post down any questions you might have in the comments. Thank you so much.